So, if you are familiar with the story, you would know that I started my journey of entrepreneurship in July 2024. I went on to do various different freelance gigs, working with various different industries and sectors. And ultimately, I really wanted to position myself as someone who is working on building my own agency as well as my own community. So, with that in mind, I then decided to niche down to a completely new world and start working with fractional CFOs and independent finance leaders. I've had prior experience working within the financial space and the fintech space, but nothing as specific as fractional CFOs per se. So that was always going to be a interesting journey in terms of getting my foot in the door. And that is how I sort of felt that it was important to introduce the 4 stages of brand authority to this channel, because ultimately that is the underlying methodology of how I've built everything and how I will continue to build everything. So I just felt it was in my best interest to develop it and have it in a way that I can build out as something that is a tool and a resource that can help you with your level of brand authority. So please do check out the free masterclass series, right? There's 4 videos based on the 4 stages of brand authority. And I believe that it will be incredibly useful for you. So please do check it out. But with that in mind, I wanted to talk about the importance of not just niching down, but also allowing yourself to understand your qualification criteria for your ICP. Because it's all well and good saying that you want to work with a particular industry or a particular sector, but then you have to get into the brains of the ICP. You have to get into their world. You have to start to understand their ecosystem. And that part is one of the more interesting bits, because you really have to do the research and the insights to understand their pain points and their agitations, and ultimately where you slot in as a painkiller to help resolve those pain points. And for me, it was quite an interesting journey of breaking down the aspects of even how I niched down in the first place. But in short, based on the work that I do as a brand authority strategist, I have experience within PR, marketing, and branding, a decade of experience. But then when I ventured into my own sort of journey in terms of building my own agency, I realized that no one particularly cares about personal branding, right? And it may sound a bit weird, but people don't care because with the way that personal branding has presented itself now, it no longer aligns with the idea of it being a revenue generating practice, right? It's more so deemed as something that you do to kind of get your name out there and to be deemed more as an influencer. So that can put off a lot of people, especially those who are in more high senior leadership positions. They're not looking to be an influencer. What they want to be is a key person of influence, right? I talk about that often in my videos. So with that in mind, that is the one thing that I had to learn in the process, that no one cares that much about personal branding. All they care is about how the level of branding correlates with the idea of generating more revenue or revenue generating opportunity as a result. And then if you can find a way to actually track that as an actual data point to suggest that, then you are in the right process, you're in the right place. So with that, it was a lot of understanding and simplifying the process for myself, but then also of how I'm able to target prospects and leads in terms of understanding them more, but then also allowing them to look at me and feel like, you know what, this person understands me and understands my world. So I have good faith that this person will be able to actually help me. And when I first narrowed it down, the first pain point that I discovered through all my research is that the fractional CFOs as a whole within the UK market are incredibly referral dependent, right? And what that means is that with you relying on referrals, you are relying on someone to give a good word that you are someone that is not only good at the job that you're doing, but you're also looking for work. And your level of referrals is only as wide as your network, and is only as wide as the people who are actively looking to help you in the pursuit of getting more clients. So with that in mind, there is no system in place that allows fractional CFOs to generate their own opportunities or their own leads. They are always at the mercy of someone else putting a good word in for them in that sense. So that was the interesting aspect of it. So, okay, I'm like, okay, they are referral dependent. So they rely heavily on referrals and they don't necessarily use these profiles a lot to amplify all the work they've done because they are incredibly credible as people within their industry, but they're not as visible enough because they don't share the actual information at hand. There's far too many stories. I've had conversations with CFOs giving me amazing stories, but it's just not documented anywhere. There's nothing to verify that this thing actually happened. It's just something that they know and something that the sort of inner circle would be aware of. And with that, you're ultimately sitting on a gold mine. You're sitting on a gold mine and you don't necessarily look at it as something feasible or worth sharing because you're living in it. And I always say, when you are in that process where you are living in it and you are ultimately standing on top of the gold, looking around left and right, thinking, where is it? You're standing on top of it. That's why you can't see it. So you have to acknowledge that your day-to-day activity and what you do and how you live your life and how you navigate is all gold. You need to just establish and remember it that is gold, because there are going to be other people who are going to watch your content, who's going to read your content, who may listen to your content and actually learn a thing or two that you actually felt this is something that you felt everyone knew, or something that you just do without even blinking or thinking about it. So it's very much something that is innate to you. But you have to remember that it's not innate to everyone. So it's in your best actual reality to share with the people that you know, and to share with the people who will ultimately look at you as a key person of influence and the obvious choice. So when it comes down to building that actual qualification criteria, that was one aspect of referral dependency. But then the research opened up a whole can of worms. It started to get really interesting, and I started to geek out a lot when it came down to the actual approach. A lot of the CFOs in practice were working with more conglomerates, so bigger sort of industry recognized providers that offer work in exchange of being part of the platform. I won't mention any names in reference, but you would get the gist in terms of that. The industry as a whole, there are establishments within the industry who are providers of sort of jobs and opportunity, but because you are aligned with them, you are effectively using their borrowed credibility as a establishment in order for you to get work, right? So with that in mind, I then realized that there are various different types of fractional CFOs. So if you're still watching this, regarding your ICP or your business or whoever you're looking to sell to, you have to identify the various different types of that same ICP. Because then when you start to do that, you realize that that actual ICP isn't actually the person you should be targeting. When in actual fact, there are the intricacies that you need to bear in mind in order to establish exactly who that person is. And once you get to that stage when you know exactly who that person is regarding their pain points, it makes it a lot more easier to produce content. So with that in mind, so I understood that some of them, a lot of them in that case, are referral dependent. I know a lot of them rely on being part of a bigger establishment in terms of getting work. Not many of them has developed a system in terms of being able to generate their own leads. And that is where I then incorporated the Phases brand authority system, but the authority flywheel aspect as the main selling point, because that part is what leads from your core platform to revenue, right? And we all want revenue. Let's keep it real. The approach of me being able to document that process as a way of not only raising your profile and not only building your level of brand authority, but for it to lead to a point of you to get revenue. And as that authority flywheel continues to turn, you are reinvesting that revenue to continue to do more things to improve your level of visibility and to turn that private credibility into visible credibility, essentially. So, with that in mind, the one thing that I had to also establish in the breakdown of my qualification criteria are those who actually work within a business that they started themselves. And that part is particularly important. And for me, that is when I would say I hit the nail on the head, because those who are very much looking to develop their business right, and they're very much looking to establish their business brand, as we call it, a lot of them who are very much in the position where they want to lead on their own terms are the sort of ICP that makes the most sense, because they do not rely on a bigger establishment to get opportunity. They have taken the leap, in actual fact, to develop their own practice or their own company regarding their CFO services. So, with that in mind, they are going to be more keen to learn how to build a more predictable pipeline system, as they don't have, or they're not relying on anyone else apart from referrals. They're relying on the referrals, but when the referrals run dry, there isn't really much to go forward with, because you're just caught up in the actual aspect of work and delivery. And that was one of the most interesting aspects of things as well, because with you getting caught up in delivery, imagine it yourself. When you are working on something quite important and you're just busy, you are going to naturally have things that fall off of the radar. Posting content online, right? That's something that falls off the radar quite often. Doing your newsletter, that can be something that falls off the radar. Doing your content, your video content, all those things that align with being able to amplify your level of credibility, it just gets put to the corner because you're just so caught up in delivery. But yet you want to ensure that you are building your business as a reputable business through your business brand and your personal brand. And then that is when I figured that a lot of these CFOs, per se, have the credibility, they have the know-how, the knowledge, and the expertise to match, but they just don't have the time, they don't have the capacity, and they just want things done, right? And then that's when it hit me with the idea of narrowing down my criteria to CFOs who are referral dependent, who do not rely on being part of a bigger establishment, who has their own company that is a registered business, right? And that business is something that they actually own, that does the CFO services under that business. And then when I've narrowed it down to that aspect of things started to get a bit more easier, I would say. Not so easy, but a bit easier, where it made a lot more sense in terms of the targeting and why. Because a lot of those people in particular want more predictable systems that mean they can get more leads and generate more revenue as a result. So, with all of that, I would say when it comes down to your ICP, yes, it's all well and good you have an ICP. We need to break it down even further. What are their pain points? What are their counterparts doing that other people may not be aware of? What is the bigger sort of aspect of the landscape of your ICP that you figured is something that is an interesting thing to point out, that is something you want to personally resolve? Once you get to that side of things, and then you are able to establish your ICP and break it down even further as different archetypes of that one ICP, you will then realize, as you speak with different people, where they fall within the remit. And when I say you are now in a position where you build your own qualification criterias, then everything shifts for you. Because based on sort of my level of thinking and going through that process, I broke down the ICP into 4 different archetypes of that ICP. So I know that the ones that I would personally be looking for are the ones who are not even intentionally thinking about it, but they have positioned it where they have built a business brand. And the 2 things actually that are missing is the personal brand aspect and the campaign brand. So that is where I come in to express the aspects of brand authority, as you know, when I talk about the aspects of your personal brand, your business brand, and your campaign brand. And then it's acknowledged that they have a business brand. Yes, they may have a personal brand. We all have personal brands, yes. Whether they are intentionally working on it is a whole nother story. But the one thing that a lot of people do not have is the campaign brand. And with the campaign brand, that is how you are then able to build that momentum that allows you to build your personal brand and your business brand simultaneously. You see where I'm going with this? So now that I approach CFOs in that regard, regarding their brands, they feel that they have a brand. But then when you break it up into its intricacies of the personal brand, the business brand, and the campaign brand, more often than not, the response is the realization that they have the business brand, but not so much the personal brand. And they didn't even fathom or think of the idea of a campaign brand of importance. So with that in mind, that is how I got to my sort of process of knowing exactly who I am reaching out to, who I am targeting, who I am producing content for on my LinkedIn platform, and how I'm really using that as a way to align and help with clients as well when they are identifying exactly who it is they're trying to pinpoint. Because when you break down your ICP and then you look at the various different criterias that align, it will change everything for you. So I hope this video was useful. I felt like it was a bit of rambling, but I feel like it really hit home in terms of how I got to the positioning where I am now, presenting and doing the relevant outreach towards those said people based on all the research I've done. So if you take anything away from this video, I would say do the utmost research that you feasibly can in order for you to paint a perfect narrative of the landscape of your ICP. And if you watch my previous video, I always talk about the importance of developing actual resources that can align for you to continue to nurture and build your research in real time. Because once you actually get your ICP to verify that this thing is actually useful and you are now speaking in their language, everything will start to change for you. So let me know if you found this useful. Please do like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you tomorrow. Peace out. Look after yourself.